happening right now is that Russia, which is led by Vladimir Putin, a dictator, is looking at Ukraine, which is a country to its east, as an opportunity to project power and potentially take over. Historically, Russia had Ukraine as part of the Soviet Union, and after the end of the Soviet Union, Ukraine became independent. But Vladimir Putin, he believes that Ukraine should be part of Russia's influence sphere, and he wants to get it back. And so right now, he's putting troops alongside Ukraine's border, 100,000 of them, and threatening to invade, threatening to topple the government. And this government is a democracy. And so that's why the United States is standing up now and telling Russia, you cannot do that. You can't invade a democracy and take it over just for your own country's sense of pride and power.
Okay, very good to know, I thought. So here is where Russia stands. It denies any plan to invade Ukraine, despite a buildup of about 100,000 Russian troops near its border. It's also laid out a series of demands it says will improve security in Europe. The Kremlin, part of Russia's government, have been urging NATO to deny Ukraine and other ex-Soviet countries membership. NATO said no, it can't agree to that. Russia also wants NATO to roll back military developments in Central and Eastern Europe. And I'll let you guess NATO's response to that. It was a big fad now.
The document we've delivered includes concerns of the United States and our allies and partners about Russia's actions that undermine security, a principled and pragmatic evaluation of the concerns that Russia has raised, and our own proposals for areas where we may be able to find common ground. We make clear that there are core principles that we are committed to uphold and defend, including Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, and the right of states to choose their own security arrangements and alliances.
Now, because of these tensions, NATO countries have increased military personnel in the area.
The core reason for NATO involvement is that NATO, which is an alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty Alliance organization, which is an alliance, is there to essentially protect Europe from Russia. This is part of the Cold War period. NATO was a smaller entity during the Cold War. And after the end of the Cold War, when the Soviet Union collapsed, it expanded eastward. And there are countries now that are part of that alliance. What the alliance requires is that if a country in the alliance is attacked, all the other countries around it and that are part of it will support those countries. And there are neighbors all around Ukraine that are NATO allies of the United States. So our concern as a country is that not only if Russia were to take over Ukraine, would they be invading a democracy illegally, but they would also then be posing a direct threat to NATO countries that border Ukraine, thereby potentially pulling us in. Troop levels, in this case, matter in many ways for the psychology of the moment. So the United States, with the recent announcement by the Secretary of Defense of activating 8,500 American troops to potentially go to NATO countries, that's done to reassure those countries that are next to the potential conflict that we have their back, that we're not going to allow them to get invaded, and that essentially makes these countries feel more comfortable with a tougher policy on sanctions, which is the primary pressure point that the Biden team is trying to use to pressure Vladimir Putin to not invade. 8,500 troops in and of themselves is smaller than 100,000, obviously. There's a lot of questions about how much or if the United States would even become militarily engaged. President Biden has said no, that's not what he's trying to do. But he does want our NATO allies to know that we are going to protect them and support them during this crisis.
Now, there has been one holdout in all of this. That would be Germany. Berlin has yet to deliver, while also urging prudence when it comes to potential economic sanctions against Moscow. That's drawn criticism from Ukraine's capital and threatened to undermine the effort to present a strong and united front against Russian aggression. Right now, the whole situation appears to be in a holding pattern. However, the U.S. did say some of Russia's concerns might be addressed, possibly offering a path to de-escalation. Officials from Russia and Ukraine met in Paris Wednesday, mediated by France and Germany. Ukraine's President Vladimir Zelensky said the talks were positive, and diplomats have another date for 2 weeks from now. The Ukrainian foreign minister said this, quote, means that Russia for the next 2 weeks is likely to remain on the diplomatic track. Vladimir Putin says still holds his cards and will single-handedly determine Russia's next move. So the question is, what will he or will he not do?
Well, he has a history of betraying his word and a history of invading his neighbors. In 2000, when he became the leader of Russia, he unleashed a horrendous human rights violating bombing campaign of Chechnya, which was a separatist republic from Russia. 8 years later, he invaded Georgia, which, similar to Ukraine, was once part of the Soviet Union and then became an independent country, to killing thousands. And then in 2014, he did invade Ukraine, Crimea, the eastern part of Ukraine, and annexed it, stole that land and annexed it to Russia. And over 10,000 Ukrainians have been killed in that illegal invasion. So there's a lot of skepticism about his word. The United States and Russia combined possess 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. Any military conflict between the United States and Russia has the potential to escalate into a dynamic that none of us want. And that means with the nuclear arsenal potentially in the background. So it's best to avoid this. It's best to not have a war. It's best to have Vladimir Putin pull back and to have the pressure that's being pushed on him diplomatically and through economic pressure, through sanctions, make him understand clearly that it's going to be painful if he invades Ukraine. And if he invades Ukraine, it will be painful for the Russian troops in a war with the Ukrainian people. And so that's the dynamic that we're talking about. To go to a third world war and that other end state is certainly far away down the road. But the risk as well of not saying anything and of not standing up to Vladimir Putin at this moment before there's a war could embolden him to continue to push forward in the future. So that's why this is such a high stakes moment.
Now, officials on all sides of this say there is still a chance for diplomacy to resolve the crisis. All of that said, here in the U.S., some far-right Republicans are asking why the U.S. is confronting Russia at all. And I'm sure many everyday Americans have that question, too, maybe for different reasons.
What it means for the United States is that we will be there for our allies, for our partners, that we will have rules of the road for how the world operates, that we will not allow countries just to invade whomever they want, whenever they want, knock out our friends, knock out our allies, knock out democracies. And that means that we can then accomplish things with our friends and allies, as discussed. Issues like climate change, issues like global economic development, issues like stopping the spread of nuclear weapons, stopping the pandemic. All of that requires partnership around the world with all the countries that we can work with. And by engaging on this, we are demonstrating that we actually, as Americans, are a partner in the world, to the world, and with the world. And that's crucial for our long-term security and stability, and it reflects our values.